What if the most powerful military alliance in modern history suddenly lost its strongest member? Not weakened. Not shaken. Gone. No United States. No American troops. No nuclear umbrella. Just Europe, on its own. And the question isn't just what happens next? The real question is, would it survive? Right now, cracks are forming. Political disagreements. Military hesitation. Strategic friction. Countries that once moved in lockstep are starting to say no, airspace denied. Bases restricted. Missions blocked. For the first time in decades, NATO doesn't look united. It looks uncertain. And suddenly, a once unthinkable idea is being whispered out loud. What if the United States walks away? Let's start with something surprising. Europe is finally spending. For years, critics in Washington complained that European allies relied too heavily on American protection, that they underinvested in their own defense. That era might be ending. In recent years, defense budgets across Europe have surged massively. Germany, once deeply cautious about military expansion after World War II, has dramatically increased its spending. A historic shift for a nation that spent decades avoiding military power. Poland is going even further. It's pouring resources into tanks, artillery, and manpower, quietly building one of the most formidable land forces in Europe. Across the continent, governments are committing to long-term defense targets that would push military spending to levels not seen in generations. On paper, this looks like progress. Even strength. But here's the problem: money doesn't equal power. Not immediately. Because building a military isn't just about spending. It's about time, coordination, and experience. And Europe is still catching up. If you look at the numbers alone, Europe looks strong. Millions of active troops. Multiple advanced militaries. Modern equipment. But war isn't fought on spreadsheets. It's fought in chaos. And that's where the cracks start to show. European armies don't operate like a single machine. They operate like dozens of separate ones. Different tanks. Different weapons. Different systems. Many of them don't even work together. Imagine trying to fight a war where your allies can't share parts, can't repair each other's vehicles, and can't seamlessly coordinate in battle. That's the reality. And in modern warfare, logistics is everything. Moving troops quickly. Refueling aircraft mid-air. Striking targets deep behind enemy lines. These are the things that decide wars. And for decades, those capabilities came from one place, the United States. Without it, Europe doesn't just lose strength. It loses speed, reach, precision. And in war, that can be the difference between victory and collapse. Now here's the part most people never think about. The part that doesn't show up in headlines. Command. Control. Intelligence. Modern warfare isn't just tanks and soldiers. It's data. Satellite imagery. Real-time surveillance. Encrypted communications. This invisible network is what allows armies to act as one. And right now, that network is largely built and controlled by the United States. Take it away. And suddenly, coordination becomes confusion. Information becomes delayed. Decisions become slower. In a real conflict, those delays don't just cost time. They cost lives. Europe is trying to build its own systems. Trying to take control of its own command structure. But building something like that isn't fast. And it definitely isn't easy. Because once the system breaks, there's no pause button. For nearly 80 years, one idea has kept the peace in Europe. A simple, terrifying idea: attack one NATO country, and you risk nuclear war with the United States. That threat alone has stopped wars before they started. It's not about using nuclear weapons. It's about making sure no one ever wants to. But if the US leaves, that guarantee disappears. Europe isn't defenseless, though. France and the United Kingdom both have nuclear weapons. And there are growing discussions about extending that protection to other European countries. A shared shield. A European deterrent. But here's the uncomfortable truth: deterrence only works if your enemy believes you'll actually use it. Would France risk everything to defend another country? Would it gamble its own survival? That's not a political question. It's a human one. And in moments like that, doubt is dangerous. Now let's flip the perspective. Because this isn't just about Europe. If the United States leaves NATO, what does it lose? At first glance, it might seem like a win. Fewer obligations. Lower costs. More focus on other global threats. But beneath the surface, the losses are enormous. Because Europe isn't just an alliance. It's a launchpad. Air bases that allow rapid deployment across continents. Naval stations that secure entire oceans. Infrastructure that makes global military power possible. Remove that, and suddenly, the US isn't operating worldwide. It's operating regionally. Even intelligence takes a hit. European allies provide critical information on threats, movements, and emerging dangers across multiple regions. Without that network, blind spots appear. And in global strategy, blind spots are deadly. Here's where things get truly dangerous. Not in the long term, but in the transition. Because Europe might become strong enough on its own one day. But it's not fully ready yet. And that gap? That window of vulnerability? That's when enemies act. Right now, Russia is locked in a grinding war. Slow progress. Massive losses. Enormous pressure. But still advancing. Still adapting. And intelligence analysts warn that within a few years, it could be ready to test something bigger. Something riskier. If that moment comes, and the United States is no longer there, Europe would face that challenge alone. And it's not just Europe paying attention. Allies across the world are watching closely. Countries that depend on US security guarantees are asking one question: if they leave NATO, would they leave us too? And when doubt enters the equation, everything changes. Nations start preparing for a future without backup. Building their own defenses. Creating their own strategies. Trust, once shaken, is hard to rebuild. So what happens if the United States walks away? The answer isn't simple. Europe wouldn't collapse overnight. It wouldn't suddenly fall apart. But it would be weaker. Slower. More vulnerable at the exact moment it can least afford to be. And for the United States? Walking away wouldn't just be a strategic shift. It would be a transformation. From a global power to something smaller. Something more limited. This isn't just about budgets. Or politics. It's about balance. Power. And the fragile system that has kept the peace for generations. Because sometimes, the most dangerous moment in history isn't when war begins. It's when the system that prevents it starts to disappear.